Hello everyone, this is Dr. Pete, and I got a lot of phone calls the last few days about different topics, and a few of them that stood out I want to do videos on. One of them is word choices, and I know this is kind of funny topic, but I've kind of touched on it before, and talking about words mean things, and so I think sometimes it's good to refresh. When talking to people, especially professors or even students, words mean things. So when my generation, being X generation, talks to World War II people, they have different phrases and words that mean different things to them. And then when I use those terms to a younger generation, a lot of times they'll have a different interpretation as well. And then I have an 11-year-old where I'll sit there and explain things, and they are more the snowflakes or millennials, and they have even a distinctly different way of looking at things. And words mean things. And so the reason I emphasize this is that typically when writing papers, students are very direct. They seem to use words in a very solid way and an appropriate way. And I don't see a lot of issues with that. Sometimes there are times when students will not use the proper grammar or APA and things like that, but normally most people do a pretty decent job. Either they write to the level they're at, and then every now and then we'll expand and use different words on a different, like say, writing level or grammar level. But for the most part, people use words they feel comfortable with and they are able to develop and all that. So that's one of the keys to education, is trying to get that word level expanded and grow it a little bit. And that's kind of what's important with that. But what I notice is when students email, I think they sometimes forget they're having a conversation with someone because it comes off as texting or it comes off as kind of informal. So it's not to say that when a student calls me or emails me, it has to be formal, like Dr. Turzop, you have to, or Dr. this or Dr. that. I think that's polite, and I think, like Parvin Gibbs said, good manners never go out of style. But having said that, it's not like it has to be formal and there's a certain chain of how the conversation happens. But what does have to happen is when students will use words that are maybe not so accurate. Okay, and here's an example. I had a professor ask me, like, what do you do when a student says something like, I think you're picking on me and my grades are bad, and then I believe this is harassment, and they start using really aggressive words like that. It sounds like they're being assaulted, and it sounds like they're being singled out and abused, and they'll use words like that. And I said to this professor, I said, look, you have to quickly be very clear with the student that those are very serious comments, and that you don't appreciate them, and that if you want to reset the conversation and talk with the appropriate language and words, then that's what you need to do right away. And if they keep saying things like you've harassed them and you're abusing them and things like that, then you need to contact your administrator. Even though the general concept is always be quiet, run for the hills, and don't say anything, if you do that, you've just empowered that person to be a bully. And then the next professor pays for it even more because they realize, well, I can be a bully. All I got to do is say X, Y, Z. Okay? So you have to really fight that right up front. And sometimes I call it like the student lawyer who wants to sit there and argue about everything. They put more time in arguing why they should get better grades than actually doing the work that you say. Or they're going to go tell the dean, or they're going to threaten you, or they're going to use the evaluation against you. Well, you can't control that. All you can do is do quality work and hope your administrators see that. But I would say is you don't have to be fearful, you don't have to be ugly and aggressive back, but you do need to set the definitions of the conversation. Meaning, and I say this openly. I had a student once tell me that they had plagiarized on a paper, and at that time their parent had died, and I felt really bad for him because, I mean, anytime you lose a parent or a loved one, that's a big deal, and I would be more than happy to give a student time off. But they do have to go through the school, and the school has to they have to know what's going on. So it's not like it just happens and it's just some, why don't you show up for a week? I mean, these are documented excuses and they're excusable issues. But I also want to make sure the student knows that from a grading standpoint, there'll be more time. It's not an issue. It's not going to be late or penalized. But anyways, the student said, "No, I got all my work in, and that's it. I'm not doing any more." Well, they plagiarized, and I mean the whole paper. So what are you going to do? You can't sit there and say, "Well, you get a pass for having a death in the family." You just it wasn't just a little bit. I mean, it was the whole paper, and so you put it into the school and all that, and then I had the student screaming at me, calling me. I think what I got from the conversation, I was either the devil or a devil's advocate, or his henchman, or something like that. I'm not really sure because there was so much screaming. So I basically said, "Look, I'm gonna hang up on you right now, and then when you get your senses back, you can call me. But more importantly, maybe we need to document things in writing." So I just emailed the student from then on. And I controlled the conversation that way because she couldn't control herself by screaming, yelling, being abusive, almost manic at times, depressed at others. I wasn't going to put up with that. So I contacted the school right away and said, "Look, this is what's going on. I have compassion for this. This is what she did, and this is where we're at." Well, the long end of the story was the school had just started graduate school, and they said, we've never had plagiarism ever happen at our school. We don't even check for it in our systems." And I said, "Well, that's a large issue there for you, because you need to sit there and make sure that one, you're checking for plagiarism and you have a policy for it." So that was an issue that came from it. And the school didn't like the fact that they were being told that they did not have the policy in place. And also, there are students who will plagiarize. You have to know what to do with them. Doesn't have to be ugly or mean, but it has to be dealt with. Well, then the next issue then is how do you sit there and deal with that? How do you deal with a student that's having mental issues and things of that nature? There was all these things going on. So what I told them is we have to get a process in place, things like that, and that we have to recognize that the student is having issues and that they need help and support, but at the same time not feed into it and negativity and things like that, because if this happens again, she'll do the same behavior with a professor who might not have the ability to stand up to them because they don't want to lose their job. So again, there are real consequences to using these words. There are professors who lose their jobs because someone screams that they've been harassed or abused, or they've been cursed, or they don't understand what the words are that they use, and that results in some very negative outcomes, and that's not fair to the professor. But then again, it's not fair. Like, what if I called you up at your work and said, "This student cheated on their work, and you're the boss, you should know this, you should do something, they're a cheater, they're a plagiarist." I mean, that wouldn't be appropriate either. Okay, so make sure that while we want good quality professors and students, that it's a mutual respect issue, and that words do mean things, and they can make impacts, and they can ruin people's lives. And you may think that you're using a word in a very normal way, but other generations see it very distinctly different. Be careful with how you step into it. And then if you do find out you overstepped, it's okay to apologize and say, "I might have misused those words. Let me use a different set of words." And I think people can respect that. But if you don't do that and you cost someone their career, or worse is this, the professor steps back and doesn't do their job, and they just want to keep their job, then you've hurt other students, because you might have gained by a few points, but other students lose the quality feedback because of what you did. You got to think about stuff like that. Having said that, in my class, if you want to go and say something negative, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. I'm retired, military. I mean, I don't even have to work, so I do this because I enjoy doing it. And but then again, I believe I'm professional. I believe I work to a higher level, higher standard. But if you feel like you got to be ugly and mean and say very, very disgusting, mean and mean-spirited things, that's your choice. But remember, there's consequences to it, and there's consequences in the sense of you're going to have a strained relationship with the professor. They're not going to be so forgiving. They're going to follow every rule that they can. They're going to check every word for plagiarism. It's not going to be what you think. The rules don't work in one direction. They work in both directions. So the advice I give professors is control the conversation. Tell them that you don't appreciate the tone and the words, and that when they're ready, you'll have that talk. That's professional. Document it with your administrator. The students, I say the other side, be respectful. You only got to be with that professor anywhere from 5, 8 to 16 weeks, so who cares? It's over with soon, and you move on with your life. Give some feedback that's constructive and accurate. Don't inflate it, hyperbole and all that. Just be fair and honest. So I appreciate that, and if that helps out, I do. I hope it helps out. But having said that, I do appreciate the topic this morning. Thank you.